She cheated with my best friend, then secretly signed over our $400, $0 house to him, and now he's claiming I have no rights. Am I just losing everything? Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never saw it coming. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about my wife, Lisa. We had been married for 8 years, and I always believed we were solid, happy, even. We had our ups and downs, sure, but nothing that made me doubt her loyalty. That was until I started noticing small things that seemed off, little messages on her phone that she quickly deleted, her being unusually secretive about her social media, and her disappearing into the bedroom for hours without explanation. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed at work or dealing with some personal stuff. But deep down, I sensed something darker was going on. It all blew up one Saturday afternoon. I was cleaning the garage when I found her phone lying on the kitchen table, unlocked. I normally wouldn't do that, but something compelled me. I looked through her recent messages out of curiosity, nothing too unusual at first, just casual banter with her friends. But then I saw a text chain with her best friend, Michelle, that made my stomach turn. They were talking about meeting up for more fun and secret nights. I know I shouldn't have kept reading, but I couldn't stop. Then I saw a photo of Lisa with a guy I didn't recognize, and she was kissing him. The caption was, "Finally, I got my escape." That was the moment I realized she'd been cheating on me for months. I felt like the ground had fallen out from under me. I stared at the photo, my mind racing. My wife, my partner, the woman I trusted with everything, she was cheating on me with my best friend, Mike. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't breathe. My mind went numb and I just sat there, trembling. I couldn't believe it. How long had she been doing this? Was I just blind, or did I ignore the signs? I felt sick, furious, and completely lost all at once. I wanted to confront her right then, but I knew I needed a plan. I couldn't just accuse her without evidence, and I certainly couldn't do it in the heat of the moment. So I waited, trying to gather my thoughts, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. The next few days were a blur. I started noticing more things, her phone ringing at odd hours, her being overly defensive when I asked about her whereabouts, and her lying about where she was going. I looked into her bank accounts and saw charges for hotel stays and dinners in places she'd never mentioned. That's when I found out she had secretly signed over our house, our $400, $0 house, to Mike. I couldn't believe it. She had transferred the title to him without telling me, and she was claiming she had no idea it was done. That was a lie. I found the paperwork hidden in her desk drawer. She had planned this for a while, and she was so brazen about it she thought she could get away with it. When I confronted her about the house, Lisa's face twisted into a smirk. She told me I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, and that I had no right to question her. She said she was doing what was best for her, that I was suffocating her, and that I was just jealous of her happiness. The nerve of her. She lied about everything. She insisted she was innocent, that Mike was just a friend, that she had no idea about the house transfer, and that I was crazy for suspecting her. But I knew better. I had seen the evidence, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of this one. Honestly, the emotional impact hit me like a freight train. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now I was questioning everything: our marriage, my judgment, my own worth. The woman I thought I knew was a liar and a cheat. And Mike, my best friend, was complicit in this whole mess. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I thought about all the memories, all the promises, and how she had been so manipulative. The worst part was knowing she had planned to take everything from me. Our house, my savings, everything I worked for. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal, and I didn't know how to come up for air. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I decided I had to fight back. I couldn't just sit around and let her destroy what little was left of my life. That's when I started making plans, legal, financial, and personal. I was going to find out exactly what she'd done, how deep her deception went, and I was going to make sure she paid for it. I couldn't trust her anymore, and I definitely couldn't stay married to her after this. I was angry, yes, but also determined. I was going to take back what was mine, no matter what it took. If you had told me a few weeks ago that my wife was cheating on me with my best friend, I'd have laughed in your face. But now, I was living it. And I was about to find out just how far she was willing to go to keep her lies hidden, and how much I was willing to do to make her regret it. After I found out about the house, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw that damn photo of Lisa and Mike. It felt like my entire world was crumbling. I knew I had to act fast, but I also needed to keep my head clear. Confronting her again wasn't an option just yet. I needed more proof, a plan, and a way to protect myself financially. The first thing I did was dig into the paperwork she'd hidden. I found the transfer of the house, signed over to Mike, and the whole thing was done in her name with her signature. That alone told me she'd planned this for a while. She'd been talking about starting fresh and getting away from me, but I didn't realize she'd been plotting to steal everything I worked for. I decided to go to a lawyer the next morning. It was the most logical step, but it was also the hardest. Sitting there, explaining everything, her lies, the affair, the house transfer, felt surreal. The lawyer looked over the documents, confirmed what I already suspected. The transfer was fraudulent and I had legal grounds to challenge it. But it wouldn't be easy. Lisa had apparently signed the house over to Mike without my consent, and I was just learning about it now. I also found out she'd been draining our joint account, buying herself new clothes, expensive dinners, and even paying for her hotel stays. She'd been living a double life, and I was just now catching up. That night, I decided I needed to confront Lisa again. I couldn't wait any longer. When she got home, I asked her straight up about the house transfer. Her face went pale for a second, then she started lying again. "I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't sign anything. You're just paranoid," she snapped. I pushed her harder, showing her the paperwork, and she finally cracked a little. She admitted she'd signed some papers, but she claimed she was forced, that Mike had manipulated her. She spun some story about needing money, about how she felt trapped, and how she didn't want to hurt me but couldn't see any other way out. I could see the desperation in her eyes. She knew she'd been caught, and she was scrambling to save face. That moment was a turning point. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. Rage at her betrayal, but sadness because I realized I'd been blind for so long. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Now it was clear she'd been lying to my face for months, maybe longer. I told her I was going to fight for my rights and that I wasn't going to let her steal my house or my money. I also warned her that I was going to expose everything, her affair, her lies, her scheme to take everything from me. I wasn't going to let her get away with it, no matter what. Over the next few days, I started gathering evidence. I made copies of all the documents, took screenshots of her text messages with Mike, and even hired a private investigator to follow her around. I wanted to know if she was still seeing him, if she was planning to run away with him or try to hide the money. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She had been planning this for months. She even bought a new phone and hid it, probably for her secret meetings. It was like watching a bad movie unfold in real life, but it was my life and I was the one being betrayed. Meanwhile, Lisa kept lying, spinning stories about how she loved me, how she felt trapped, and how she didn't mean for any of this to happen. She'd cry, say she was sorry, but her eyes told a different story. I saw right through her. She was a manipulative, selfish woman who wanted everything her way. The more I learned, the more I realized I needed to protect myself, not only emotionally but legally. I was planning to file for divorce, fight for my rights, and get that house back. I knew it wouldn't be easy. She had her lies, her schemes, and her connections with Mike. But I also knew I wasn't going to let her ruin me. One of the most shocking revelations came when I found out she had forged my signature on some documents to speed up the house transfer. That was the final straw. I could see she'd been lying to everyone, including her own family, about her new life with Mike. I felt sick thinking about how close I'd been to losing everything. That house was more than just a home. It was my investment, my savings, my future. And she had planned to take it all from me. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I was going to fight for what was mine, and I was going to expose her for the liar she was. I still remember the moment I decided to take legal action. I called my lawyer and told him everything about the affair, the house, her lies, and her scheme to steal everything. We agreed on a plan. I'd file for divorce, contest the house transfer, and seek financial restitution. It was going to be messy, but I was prepared for that. I knew I had to be careful. Lisa was cunning and she'd do anything to keep her lies intact. But I also knew I had the truth on my side, and that was my strongest weapon. I wasn't going to go down without a fight. Not after everything she'd done. I was angry, betrayed, and hurt, but I was also determined. This wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about standing up for myself after being manipulated and lied to for so long. The legal battle started sooner than I expected. I filed for divorce and contested the house transfer the very next day. My lawyer advised me to gather as much evidence as possible: texts, emails, financial records, everything that could prove her deception. I spent nights going through her phone, her emails, and her bank statements. Lisa, of course, was trying to spin her way out of it. She kept crying, insisting she was forced, that Mike manipulated her, and that she didn't mean for any of this to happen. But her tears didn't move me anymore. I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative liar who had been planning to steal my house from under my nose for months. One night, I decided I needed to confront her directly, face to face, and get some answers. I told her I knew everything: the affair, the house transfer, her lying about the money, and that I wasn't going to let her ruin me. Her reaction was a mixture of anger and denial. She told me I was crazy, that I was paranoid, and that I was accusing her of things she didn't do. She even had the audacity to say she loved me and that she was sorry for everything, but her eyes showed a different story. It was like talking to a wall. She was so used to lying, so convinced she was going to get away with it, that she couldn't even see how much she was hurting herself and me. Meanwhile, I was putting together my case. I hired a private investigator to follow her, and what I found was devastating. She was still seeing Mike. They met up in secret, exchanged messages, and even planned to leave town together once she got the house. I found proof of her meeting Mike at a hotel, receipts, photos, and even recordings of their conversations. It was clear she'd been lying all along about ending things with him. She was planning her escape, and I was just the pawn she intended to discard once she had her new life with Mike. That reality hit me hard. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about her complete betrayal and how she'd been manipulating me for her own gain. I also discovered that she'd been secretly withdrawing large sums of money from our joint account, over $50, $0, using fake receipts and forged signatures. She'd been planning her departure for months. It all made sense now why she was so secretive, why she kept lying about where she was going. She wasn't just cheating, she was systematically dismantling what we had built. I felt sick knowing she'd been so calculating. The thought that she could have just left me with nothing, no house, no savings, made my blood boil. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to act fast to protect what was mine. Over the next few weeks, I worked with my lawyer to draft a legal strategy. We filed a motion to contest the house transfer, citing forgery and fraud. I also filed for full custody of our joint accounts, froze her access, and started the process of dividing assets. I was determined to fight her every step of the way. Meanwhile, she kept up her lies, insisting she was innocent and that I was crazy for accusing her of cheating. But her stories didn't hold water anymore. I had the evidence, and I was ready to present it in court. I knew this was just the beginning of a long, ugly fight, but I was prepared for it. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my life savings in our house. The hardest part was seeing her so manipulative and how she tried to gaslight me into doubting myself. She'd cry and say she was sorry, but her actions told a different story. Her desperation was palpable. She knew she was losing control, and I could see her trying to buy time, trying to spin her lies even harder. But I stayed focused. I knew her game, and I knew I had to stay one step ahead. I kept gathering evidence, talking to my lawyer, and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. In the back of my mind, I kept asking myself how she could do this, to me, to us. How could she betray everything we had, not just emotionally but financially? It felt like a punch to the gut every time I thought about how she'd been lying to my face, hiding her affair, secretly signing over our house, draining our bank account. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, but I also knew that I had to stay strong. I had to fight for my rights, for my dignity, and for what was rightfully mine. I wasn't going down without a fight. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. The court dates came faster than I thought they would. I was prepared, had all my evidence organized, my witnesses ready, and my legal team sharp. Seeing her in court was a surreal experience. Lisa looked panicked, her usual bitchy smirk replaced with a desperate, almost frantic expression. She kept insisting she was innocent, that she'd been manipulated by Mike, that she loved me and never meant to hurt me. But I wasn't buying it anymore. Her words were hollow, her lies transparent. I could see through her like glass. When the judge asked her about the house transfer, she tried to deny signing anything, claiming she'd been coerced or that it was a mistake. But I had the forged signatures, the fraudulent documents, and the bank records showing her withdrawals. My lawyer presented everything meticulously. The judge looked over the evidence, then turned to Lisa with a stern expression. She finally broke down and admitted she'd signed the papers, under pressure from Mike, she claimed, and because she felt trapped. She said she thought she was doing what was best for her, that she didn't want to be married anymore. That was her story. Her betrayal was laid bare and her attempts at excuse-making fell flat. Meanwhile, I sat there listening, feeling a mixture of relief and anger. I knew this was just the beginning of what would be a long fight, but seeing her face the consequences of her lies was a small victory. The judge ruled to invalidate the house transfer, citing forgery and fraud. My legal team also moved to freeze her assets and prevent her from selling or transferring any more property until the case was settled. I felt a tiny bit of hope for the first time in weeks. Maybe I could get some of my life back, start over. But the emotional toll was heavy. Watching Lisa break down in court, crying and pleading, made me realize how deeply she'd manipulated everyone, including herself. She kept insisting she loved me, that she was sorry, but her actions told a different story. She'd betrayed me, my trust, and our marriage, all for some fleeting affair, and a scheme to steal everything I'd worked for. I couldn't believe she was willing to throw it all away for Mike, for sex, for a chance at a new life. It was infuriating. I felt like a fool for trusting her for so long. In the days following the court ruling, I started the process of rebuilding. I contacted a financial advisor to help me secure my remaining assets and plan my next move. I also began the process of divorce, filing the paperwork, preparing for the final separation. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail to keep what she wanted, but I was determined not to let her win. I also started seeing a therapist to deal with the emotional aftermath. I needed to process the betrayal, the anger, and the sadness that had been building up inside me. I realized I'd been carrying a lot of pain, and I had to confront it if I was going to move on. During this period, Lisa tried to contact me several times, mostly through texts and her lawyer. She kept insisting she was sorry, that she loved me, and that she'd do anything to fix everything. But I wasn't interested in her apologies anymore. I knew her game. She was trying to manipulate me again, just like she had from the start. I told her to stop contacting me and to focus on her own mess. I was done being her pawn in this twisted game. I had to focus on myself now, on healing, on protecting what was left of my life. Seeing her so desperate made me feel a strange mix of pity and anger. She'd thrown away everything, our marriage, our house, her integrity, for some sex with Mike and a quick escape. And now she was losing it all. I couldn't help but wonder how she'd sleep at night, knowing she'd destroyed what we built. But I also knew I had to let go of that anger eventually. Holding on to it would only hurt me more. I had to find a way to forgive myself for trusting her for so long, and to forgive her for what she'd done. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed to move forward. In the meantime, I kept rebuilding my life. I found a new place to live, started focusing on my career again, and reconnected with friends I distanced myself from during the marriage. The betrayal had been a wake-up call, one I wasn't going to ignore. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most, and that trust has to be earned every day. I also learned that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, doesn't bring peace, but standing up for myself, fighting for what's rightfully mine, that does. I was determined to come out of this stronger, wiser, and more cautious. Looking back now, I see how much I've grown through all this chaos. I still feel the sting of betrayal, but I also feel a sense of liberation. I'm not the same person I was before. I've learned to trust my instincts, to be more cautious about who I let into my life, and most importantly, to stand up for myself no matter what. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: never ignore the signs. People can hide their true selves for a long time, but eventually the truth comes out. And when it does, you have to be ready to fight for what's yours. Because if you don't, someone else will take it all and leave you with nothing. The months that followed felt like a whirlwind of legal battles, emotional roller coasters, and deep self-reflection. After the court ruling, I finally felt like I was reclaiming some sense of control, but the scars of betrayal ran deep. Lisa's attempts to contact me grew fewer and more desperate, and I made it clear I wasn't interested in any reconciliation. I wasn't about to let her manipulate me again, not after everything she'd done. I kept my distance, focused on rebuilding my life, and slowly I started piecing myself back together. One of the hardest parts was dealing with the fallout from her betrayal on a personal level. I'd always trusted her, trusted us, and now I had to confront the fact that the woman I loved had lied, cheated, and schemed to take everything from me. It made me question a lot of things about myself and about relationships in general. How could I have been so blind? How did I miss all the warning signs? Was I too trusting? These questions haunted me for a while, but eventually I realized that I couldn't change the past. I could only learn from it. The financial toll was another story entirely. I had to work with my lawyer to recover some of the money she drained from our accounts before the court froze her assets. It wasn't easy. She'd hidden some of the funds in offshore accounts, and tracking them down took time and effort. I also had to deal with the costs of legal fees, moving into a new place, and setting up my life again from scratch. Honestly, the whole experience left me feeling drained and exhausted, but I knew I had no choice but to keep moving forward. I also started therapy. It was a tough process, facing the pain, the anger, and the betrayal head-on. I needed to understand how I'd ended up here and how I could heal. The therapist helped me see that I'd been too trusting, that I'd overlooked the red flags, and that I deserved better. She emphasized that healing was a process, and that I had to be patient with myself. Slowly but surely, I began to forgive myself for trusting her for so long and started to accept that I was a victim of her manipulation. Meanwhile, Lisa's life was unraveling too. Her attempts to manipulate the situation only made things worse for her. Her family, who had always thought highly of her, started questioning her motives once all the evidence came out. Her friends distanced themselves and her reputation took a hit. She kept insisting she was sorry, but no one bought her sob stories anymore. Mike, of course, was nowhere to be seen, probably trying to avoid the fallout. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was scrambling to find a way to pay back some of the money she'd stolen, but it was too late. Her lies had caught up with her, and she was facing the consequences. For me, the biggest lesson was learning to trust my instincts again. I realized that ignoring the small signs, her secretive behavior, the lies, her manipulative tactics, had cost me everything. Now I was determined to be more cautious, more aware. I wasn't going to jump into another relationship blindly. I wanted to heal, to rebuild my confidence, and to find someone who genuinely valued me, not just someone who looked good on the surface. One day, I met someone new. It was a slow process. Trust doesn't come easily after betrayal, but I was ready to try again. This new person, Sarah, was kind, honest, and patient. She listened without judgment and understood that I was still healing. I didn't rush into anything, but I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find happiness again after all the pain. Looking back on everything, I realize I've come a long way. The betrayal hurt like hell, but it also taught me resilience. I learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself again. That no matter how deep the betrayal, there's always a way to heal if you're willing to face the truth and fight for your future. I still carry scars, but I refuse to let them define me. My story isn't over, and I know there are better days ahead. Trust is fragile, but I believe now that with time, patience, and self-love, I can rebuild what was broken and find happiness anew. If I could give advice to anyone in a similar situation, it would be this: don't ignore the red flags. Trust your gut. And if betrayal happens, don't let it destroy you. Fight for your rights, your dignity, and your peace of mind. Because no matter how bad it gets, you're stronger than you think. And someday the pain will turn into strength. Now, standing here looking back, I realize that the biggest lesson I've learned is about boundaries and self-worth. Lisa's betrayal shattered the illusions I had about trust and loyalty, but it also forced me to confront my own weaknesses, trusting too easily, ignoring the signs, believing in the fairy tale that everything was perfect. That illusion was a lie, and I had to face that harsh truth to start healing. The process of rebuilding wasn't just about legal battles or financial recovery. It was about rediscovering myself. I had to learn that my happiness didn't depend on her or anyone else. It was about finding my own strength, accepting that sometimes love means walking away from the ones who don't deserve you. I had to forgive myself for trusting her for so long, forgive her for her lies, and most importantly, forgive myself for feeling guilty or weak. That forgiveness was the key to moving forward. Today, I don't see her as the woman I once loved. I see her as someone who made terrible choices, who let her selfishness and greed blind her to what truly mattered. I've come to accept that some people are just not meant to be in your life, no matter how much you love them or how much hope you hold on to. That realization brought me peace. My life now is different. It's quieter, simpler in some ways, but more honest. I focus on myself, my children, and my future. I work harder, value my integrity more, and never again will I allow someone to manipulate or betray me without consequences. I've learned to listen to my instincts and to stand firm when my boundaries are challenged. I've learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what truly matters. Looking at the bigger picture, I see this ordeal as a brutal but necessary lesson. It's made me stronger, more cautious, and more aware of who I am and what I deserve. I've come to understand that no matter how much you love someone, if they betray your trust and scheme to steal from you, they don't deserve your loyalty. And that's okay. It's a part of life, painful, yes, but also a catalyst for growth. So if anyone reading this finds themselves in a similar situation, my advice is simple. Don't let the betrayal define you. Fight for your rights, protect your peace, and never settle for less than you deserve. Trust your instincts, keep your integrity intact, and remember that time heals even the deepest wounds. The scars may stay, but they're a reminder that you survived. And that, in the end, is what truly matters.